Timothy Peeler wasn't your average guy. He lived in a small town nestled among the rolling hills of North Carolina, a place where folks knew their neighbors, and the biggest excitement usually involved the high school football team. But Timothy had a secret passion, one that pulled him away from the everyday and into the silent, dark heart of the earth. Caving. From the time he was a little boy, Timothy had been fascinated by holes in the ground. Not just any holes, mind you, but the deep, mysterious openings that led to hidden worlds beneath his feet. While other kids were playing baseball or riding bikes, Timothy was usually found with a flashlight in hand, peering into crevices, his imagination running wild with thoughts of what lay beyond. As he grew older, his curiosity only deepened. He read every book he could find about geology and speleology, the study of caves. He learned about stalactites and stalagmites, about underground rivers and ancient formations that took thousands of years to grow. His love for caves wasn't just about the science, though. It was about the feeling of discovery, the thrill of stepping into a place where few, if any, humans had ever set foot. Each cave was a new adventure, a puzzle waiting to be solved. He loved the cool, damp air that greeted him at the entrance, the way the sound of his own breathing echoed off unseen walls, and the quiet beauty of crystals sparkling in his headlamp beam. He felt a special connection to these underground places, a sense of peace and wonder that he couldn't find anywhere else. Timothy wasn't reckless. He knew the dangers of caving and always made sure to be prepared. He had good gear, a sturdy helmet with a bright headlamp, extra batteries, strong ropes, and a first aid kit. He never went alone, always bringing along a friend who shared his enthusiasm, or at least understood the appeal. He meticulously mapped out the caves he explored, noting every twist, turn, and drop. He respected the delicate ecosystems within, careful not to disturb the bats, salamanders, or tiny insects that called these dark places home. Over the years, Timothy had explored dozens of caves all across North Carolina. Some were grand and sprawling, with vast chambers that felt like underground cathedrals. Others were tight and winding, requiring him to squeeze through narrow passages on his belly. He had seen breathtaking sights: waterfalls tumbling into black pools, shimmering calcite formations that looked like frozen tears, and ancient rock art left by people long ago. He thought he had seen it all, or at least a good chunk of it. But Timothy was about to discover that the earth still held secrets even he couldn't imagine. His next adventure would be unlike any other. Even with all his experience, Timothy knew there were always more secrets to uncover. One crisp autumn morning, the air smelling of fallen leaves and damp earth, Timothy set out on a solo trek. He wasn't planning a deep cave dive, just a casual hike along an old deer trail high up in the mountains, hoping to spot some new rock formations or perhaps a small, unexplored fissure. He moved with the quiet grace of someone who felt at home in the wilderness, his eyes constantly scanning, always looking for something new. He had walked for a few hours, enjoying the peaceful quiet, when he noticed something odd. Tucked away behind a thick curtain of ivy and brambles, almost completely hidden from view, was a dark opening in the side of a rocky bluff. It wasn't just another small crack or a shallow overhang. This looked like a true cave entrance, but unlike any he had ever encountered in North Carolina. Most caves in the area had mouths that were clearly carved by water or natural erosion, often showing smooth, worn rock. This one was different. The entrance was rougher, almost jagged, as if something incredibly powerful had ripped it open. The rock around it looked darker too, a deep, almost purple-black hue that seemed to soak up the sunlight rather than reflect it. And there was a strange, earthy smell coming from it. Not the usual cool, mineral scent of a typical cave, but something deeper, muskier and a little wild. Timothy pushed aside the thick vines, his heart beginning to beat a little faster with that familiar thrill of discovery. The opening was just big enough for a person to squeeze through, a dark slit in the rock face. He knelt down, shining his headlamp inside. The light seemed to get swallowed up almost immediately, not bouncing back as it usually would from limestone walls. This suggested a very deep, very open space right beyond the entrance. What truly struck him was the sheer age this entrance seemed to radiate. The edges of the rock weren't just rough, they looked ancient, weathered by countless centuries. There were no signs of modern human activity, no litter, no carved initials, no worn paths leading up to it. It felt untouched, forgotten, a gateway to a world that time had passed by. This wasn't just another cave. This felt like a doorway to something truly old, something that had been waiting for him to find it. Timothy felt a shiver run down his spine, a mix of excitement and a tiny bit of fear. This was exactly the kind of adventure he lived for. He knew, without a doubt, that he had to go inside. The strange, ancient entrance called to Timothy, stirring a deeper curiosity than usual. He knew he couldn't just walk away from it. This wasn't just another cave. It felt like a door to a secret no one else had found. Deciding to explore it wasn't a question, but a necessity. However, he wouldn't rush in without his usual care. Timothy carefully marked the spot of the cave entrance with GPS coordinates on his phone and tied a bright piece of orange ribbon to a nearby tree branch, just in case. He then hiked back down the mountain, his mind buzzing with excitement and a healthy dose of caution. He reached his truck just as the sun began to dip below the cave's horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. The first thing he did when he got home was gather his essential caving gear. His sturdy helmet, of course, with its powerful LED headlamp fully charged and extra batteries packed. He added his climbing ropes, anchors, and carabiners, even though the entrance didn't immediately suggest a need for them. Better safe than sorry, he always thought. His first aid kit, water bottles, and energy bars went into his backpack. But this time, Timothy added something extra important: his high-quality digital video camera. He usually only took it on special expeditions, preferring to experience the caves with his own eyes rather than through a lens. This cave, however, felt different. It had a mystery about it, an ancient vibe that made him think he might find something truly unique, something worth documenting in detail. He wanted to capture every unusual rock formation, every strange echo, every single moment of his journey into this untouched world. He also packed a few extra portable lights, knowing that deeper caves often swallowed light, leaving vast stretches in absolute darkness. He spent the evening checking his equipment, cleaning the camera lens, and mentally preparing himself. He traced the path on his topographical map, imagining the unseen depths beneath the mountain. He knew he was going alone, which wasn't his usual practice. But the hidden nature of the entrance made him feel like this was a personal discovery, something he needed to witness by himself first. The thought of finding something truly extraordinary, something no one had seen in perhaps thousands of years, sent a thrill through him. He set his alarm for early morning, eager to return to the mountain and unlock the secrets of the ancient cave. The next morning, Timothy was back at the hidden entrance, his backpack heavy with gear, his camera ready. He squeezed through the narrow opening, the strange, musky smell growing stronger as he went. His headlamp beam cut through the absolute darkness, revealing a passage that sloped steeply downwards. The walls weren't smooth like many limestone caves. They were rough and uneven, almost like raw, untamed rock. He started filming, narrating his observations in a low voice, trying to capture the unique atmosphere of this place. He ventured deeper, the passage widening into larger chambers, then narrowing again into tight crawls. The air grew colder, and the silence was profound, broken only by the drip of water and the crunch of his boots on the rocky floor. Timothy felt that familiar sense of peace and wonder, but something new began to mix with it. A subtle unease. It started slowly, as just a feeling. A prickle on the back of his neck, as if he wasn't truly alone. He would stop, turn his head, and shine his light into the furthest corners, but see nothing. He told himself it was just his imagination playing tricks in the deep darkness, a natural reaction to the unknown. Yet, the feeling persisted. Then came the sounds. At first, they were faint, easy to dismiss, a low rumble that could have been distant thunder or perhaps a shift in the earth. But the rumbles grew, not louder, but closer, vibrating through the rock beneath his feet. Then came something else, a deep, guttural sigh, like a giant clearing its throat, followed by a soft, rhythmic thumping. It sounded like heavy footsteps, moving slowly, somewhere ahead of him, or perhaps even behind. Timothy froze, his headlamp beam sweeping wildly. He held his breath, straining to hear over the pounding of his own heart. The thumping stopped. The cave went utterly silent again, a silence so complete it felt heavier than sound. He tried to tell himself it was just bats, or perhaps an underground stream creating strange echoes. But the sounds felt too deliberate, too heavy to be natural cave noises. He tightened his grip on his camera, still recording. A knot of apprehension began to form in his stomach. This wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was real. Someone, or something, was definitely with him in the darkness, making strange, unsettling noises that no animal he knew of could produce. His excitement about discovery was now tinged with genuine fear. He was deep, deep underground, and he was no longer alone. The unsettling silence didn't last long. Just as Timothy was about to convince himself it was his imagination, a new sound cut through the deep quiet. It was the same heavy thumping, but this time much closer, vibrating through the very rock beneath his boots. It wasn't an echo. It was the sound of something large and powerful moving, not far from him. He gripped his camera tighter, his thumb ready on the record button, even though his hand was shaking a little. He shone his headlamp forward, trying to pierce the gloom of the vast chamber he had just entered. The space was enormous, far bigger than any underground room he'd explored before, with a high, vaulted ceiling lost in darkness. His light was barely enough to reach the far walls, leaving most of the cavern in deep, oppressive shadow. Then he saw it. At the very edge of his headlamp's beam, where the light faded into thick darkness, a shape moved. It was big, much bigger than a person, and its edges were blurry, indistinct in the poor light. It shifted, like a shadow coming to life, then moved quickly out of sight. Timothy gasped, a short, sharp intake of breath. He swung his light frantically, trying to find it again, his heart hammering against his ribs. Another shape appeared, this time closer, a hulking form that seemed to detach itself from the wall of shadows. It was darker than the rock, a deep, solid black that absorbed the light. It moved with a surprising swiftness for its size, a fluid, powerful motion that reminded him of a large animal, perhaps a bear, but much, much bigger. He could hear the loud thumping again, clearer now, like giant feet hitting the rocky floor, heavy and deliberate. The hynium sound echoed, making it hard to tell exactly where it was coming from. Timothy's mind raced. He had explored caves for years, seen bats, rodents, even small salamanders. But nothing like this. This was massive, powerful, and it was moving with a purpose. He tried to rationalize it, to tell himself it was just a trick of the light, or his mind playing games in the spooky darkness. But the sheer size of the blurry shapes and the undeniable booming thumps were too real to ignore. Fear, cold and sharp, began to grip him. He was no longer just feeling uneasy. He was truly scared. He kept his camera rolling, pointing it towards the shifting shadows, hoping to capture whatever incredible, terrifying thing was sharing this ancient, underground world with him. Timothy's heart was pounding like the thumping sounds he was hearing. He kept his camera aimed at the shifting darkness, his hands steady despite his fear. He knew, deep down, that he was witnessing something extraordinary, something that defied all his knowledge of the natural world. The blurry shapes were getting closer, the heavy thumps echoing louder, and the strange, musky smell in the air grew stronger, almost overpowering. He adjusted his headlamp, trying to get a clearer view, but the light seemed to get swallowed by the vastness of the cavern and the dark quality of the moving forms. He could hear his own breath, ragged and quick, over the sound of the camera's quiet whir. He thought about turning back, about running. But a powerful urge to know, to see, kept him rooted to the spot. This was the moment of truth, the reason he'd packed his camera. Then, for a split second, it happened. As one of the colossal shapes moved past a narrow opening in the rock, where a sliver of faint, unknown light seemed to filter in from deeper within the earth, Timothy's headlamp caught it. Not a blur, not a shadow, but a clear, if brief, image. His camera was pointed right at it. It was impossibly tall, easily over 7 feet, with broad shoulders and a powerful build. Its entire body was covered in thick, dark brown hair, matted and shaggy, almost like fur. The face was glimpsed only for a fleeting instant. Deep-set eyes, a heavy brow, and a flat nose, distinctly ape-like, but with a raw, intelligent look that sent a chill down Timothy's spine. It moved with an undeniable, powerful grace, its long arms swinging slightly as it lumbered past the opening. Bigfoot. The word screamed in Timothy's mind, though he dared not utter it aloud. It was real. Not a legend, not a campfire story, but a living, breathing creature, here, deep underground, in North Carolina. The footage, he knew, was gold. He had captured it. The impossible proof. The creature disappeared back into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Timothy staring at the dark space where it had been. The thumping sounds continued, moving further away now, deeper into the cave. But Timothy hardly noticed. His mind was reeling from what he had just witnessed, what his camera had just recorded. He had found Bigfoot, not in a forest, but in the hidden depths of the earth. His fear had been replaced by a stunned, disbelieving awe. He had the proof. The awe Timothy felt after seeing Bigfoot quickly vanished, replaced by a sudden, chilling realization. Even though the creature had moved deeper into the cave, its presence still hung heavy in the air. He had been so focused on capturing the image, on proving the impossible, that he hadn't fully considered the danger. This wasn't a docile animal in a zoo. This was a wild, powerful, unknown creature in its own territory. Then, a low growl rumbled through the cavern, deep and vibrating, making the very air around him tremble. It wasn't the distant, echoing sound he'd heard before. This was close, very close. Timothy spun around, his headlamp beam sweeping frantically. He saw nothing But the growl seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a warning that shook him to his core. He felt a sudden, sharp rush of cold air, as if something enormous had just moved past him at incredible speed. His heart leaped into his throat. He hadn't seen it, but he felt its passage, a disturbance in the heavy cave air. It was then, in that terrifying moment, that Timothy knew the creature had noticed him. It wasn't just passing by. It was aware of his presence, and it was letting him know. The intelligent look he had glimpsed in its eyes flashed in his mind, and he knew it understood he was there. Pure, unadulterated fear surged through him, wiping away all thoughts of discovery or proof. Survival became his only goal. He didn't think, he reacted. He turned and started to run. He scrambled back the way he had come, his headlamp bouncing wildly, casting frantic shadows that seemed to twist and turn into menacing shapes. He no longer cared about filming or documenting. He just needed to get out. He tripped once, scraping his knee on a jagged rock, but he didn't stop. The musky smell seemed to be chasing him, growing stronger, and he could almost feel the creature's immense presence at his heels. He pushed himself through the tight passages, ignoring the scrapes and bumps, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The thumping sounds, which had faded, now seemed to return, closer again, urging him faster. He could hear a heavy breathing sound, like a deep snort, behind him. He didn't look back. He just ran, fueled by terror, until he finally saw the faint glimmer of natural light from the cave entrance. He lunged for it, squeezing through the narrow opening, bursting out into the crisp autumn air, gasping for breath, his body shaking uncontrollably. He was out. He was safe. For now. Timothy stumbled out of the cave, gasping for air, his body trembling from head to toe. He leaned against a tree, trying to calm his racing heart. The image of the hairy creature burned into his mind. He was safe, but the experience had shaken him to his core. He slowly made his way back to his truck, the camera still clutched tightly in his hand. Once home, he didn't even take off his muddy caving gear. He rushed to his computer, his fingers fumbling as he connected the camera. He needed to see the footage, to confirm that it wasn't just a terrifying dream. As the video played, his eyes widened. There it was, clear as day for a brief moment. The tall, hairy figure. Bigfoot. He had done it. He had captured undeniable proof. His first instinct was to share his incredible discovery. He called his closest friend, Mark, another avid outdoorsman. "Mark, you won't believe what I saw," Timothy blurted out, his voice still shaky with excitement and lingering fear. He recounted the entire terrifying journey, from the strange entrance to the growl and the sprint out of the cave. Mark listened patiently, but Timothy could hear the doubt in his friend's voice. "Timothy, are you sure it wasn't a bear? Or maybe a trick of the light in the dark?" Mark suggested gently. "Caves can play funny tricks on your mind, especially when you're alone." "No, Mark, I saw it, and I filmed it," Timothy insisted, frustration creeping into his voice. It was huge, covered in dark hair like a giant ape, walking on two legs. Later that evening, Timothy tried to explain it to his family over dinner. His wife, Sarah, tried to be supportive, but her eyes held a look of concern, not belief. "Honey, you've been spending a lot of time in those caves," she said softly. "Maybe you were just tired or stressed." His teenage son, Alex, just chuckled. "Dad, Bigfoot? Seriously? You've been watching too many monster movies." Timothy felt a pang of disappointment. He had expected disbelief from strangers, but not from the people closest to him. He showed them the raw footage on his camera's small screen. They watched the shaky, dark video, catching only glimpses of the blurry shapes and the fleeting image of the creature. "It's so dark, Timothy," Sarah said, squinting. "It could be anything. A shadow, a trick of the camera." Even with the video, they just couldn't grasp the reality of what he had experienced. Timothy sighed, realizing that seeing was truly believing. And for them, the grainy footage wasn't enough. He knew he had to do something more to convince them and the world. Timothy knew he couldn't let his incredible discovery stay hidden just because his closest circle doubted him. He had proof, and he felt a responsibility to share it with the world, even if it meant facing ridicule. He spent hours editing the raw footage, carefully cutting out the long, dark stretches and highlighting the moments where the strange shapes moved and, most importantly, the brief, clear shot of the creature. He added a short introduction, explaining his background as a caver and the unusual circumstances of finding the ancient cave. He uploaded the video to a popular online video sharing site, calling it Bigfoot Underground, My Cave Encounter. Then he went to bed, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. He expected a few comments, maybe some skeptics, but he had no idea what was about to happen. He woke up the next morning to his phone buzzing almost non-stop. Notifications flooded his screen. The video, which he had posted just hours before, had exploded. It had thousands of views, then tens of thousands, and by lunchtime, it was in the hundreds of thousands. Comments were pouring in, a wild mix of awe, disbelief, excitement, and anger. "OMG, this is real," one person wrote. "I always knew they were out there." Another commented, "Fake, obvious guy in a gorilla suit." But many others were sharing it, talking about it, and trying to analyze the blurry images. People were zooming in on the brief glimpse of the creature, debating its size, its features, everything. The video went viral. News sites picked up the story, showing snippets of his footage and talking about the mystery of the North Carolina cave. Online forums dedicated to unexplained creatures were buzzing. Timothy's simple video, filmed in the dark depths of an unknown cave, had become a global sensation overnight. His phone rang constantly. Strangers from all over the world wanted to talk to him. Some offered support and encouragement, sharing their own theories about Bigfoot. Others were harsh, accusing him of making it all up for fame. But through it all, the views kept climbing. Millions of people were now watching his footage, discussing it, and arguing about it. Timothy, a quiet caver from a small town, had suddenly become the center of a huge, worldwide mystery. He had wanted to convince people, and now, whether they believed him or not, everyone was talking about his Bigfoot. The viral explosion of Timothy's video brought a new kind of chaos into his quiet life. His phone, which used to ring only for family or Mark, now buzzed with unknown numbers from every corner of the country and even beyond. It wasn't just curious strangers anymore. Serious people were calling. First came the local news channels, eager for an exclusive interview with a man who claimed to have filmed Bigfoot underground. Timothy, still slightly overwhelmed by all the attention, agreed to a few, hoping that a more professional presentation would lend credibility to his story. He sat in front of cameras, trying to calmly explain his experience, showing the footage on a larger screen, pointing out the brief, clear image of the creature. Then, the calls started coming from bigger media outlets, national news networks, popular morning shows, and even science documentaries. They wanted him to fly to New York, to Los Angeles, to tell his story to millions. He politely declined, preferring to stay in North Carolina, but he agreed to more phone interviews and video calls, sharing his tale over and over again. But the most interesting calls came from a different group, Bigfoot experts and researchers. These were people who had dedicated their lives to the search for unknown creatures, people who had been laughed at and dismissed for years. They listened intently to Timothy's story, not with skepticism, but with a cautious hope. They asked detailed questions about the cave, the smell, the sounds, and especially the creature's appearance and movement. Dr. Aris Thorne, a well-known cryptozoologist with decades of experience, called him personally. "Mr. Peeler, your footage, while brief, is highly compelling," Dr. Thorne said, his voice calm and serious. "The underground element is particularly fascinating. It aligns with some older, less common theories about Sasquatch behavior." He wanted to know the exact location of the cave, offering to lead an expedition to investigate further. Timothy, however, was hesitant to reveal the precise spot, still wary of the dangers and wanting to protect the creature's hidden home. Another expert, Dr. Elena Petrova, a biologist specializing in primates, was intrigued by the creature's apparent intelligence. "The way it seemed to acknowledge your presence, Mr. Peeler, that's what interests me," she explained. "It suggests a level of awareness beyond a typical wild animal." Timothy found these conversations validating. These people weren't laughing, they were taking him seriously. They saw what he saw, or at least they were open to the possibility. He felt a surge of hope that his discovery would finally be recognized as real. He was ready to share more, to help these experts understand what he had found. He just didn't realize how quickly things were about to change, and not for the better. Timothy was starting to get used to the constant buzz of his phone and the endless questions. He was even starting to enjoy the feeling of being taken seriously by the Bigfoot experts. He was planning to talk to Dr. Thorne again, maybe even consider a supervised trip back to the cave with a team. Things were looking up. Then, one quiet Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. Timothy was in his garage, cleaning his caving gear, humming a tune, when he heard a knock at his front door. It wasn't the usual friendly rap of a neighbor. This was a firm, deliberate knock. He walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Standing on his porch were two men. They were dressed in identical dark suits, crisp white shirts, and plain ties. Their hair was neatly cut, and their faces were serious, unsmiling. They looked out of place in Timothy's cozy, slightly messy neighborhood, more like characters from a spy movie than visitors to a North Carolina home. Timothy didn't recognize them. He felt a sudden chill, a sense of unease that reminded him, strangely, of the cave. He opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to sound calm. The taller of the two men, who had piercing blue eyes, spoke first. His voice was low and smooth, but held a hint of authority. "Mr. Timothy Peeler?" he asked, not as a question, but as a statement. "Yes, that's me," Timothy replied, his guard now fully up. The man held up a small, dark leather wallet, flashing an ID card for only a second. Timothy couldn't quite make out the details, but he saw a symbol that looked like a government seal. "We're from a federal agency," the man stated. "We need to speak with you about your recent video footage." Timothy's stomach dropped. Federal agency? His Bigfoot video? This was not a news reporter or a cryptozoologist. This was something entirely different and much more serious. The other man, who had been silent, now stepped slightly forward, his eyes scanning Timothy's house, making Timothy feel like he was being inspected. "May we come in, Mr. Peeler?" the tall man asked, his tone polite but firm, leaving no room for a no. Timothy felt a wave of fear wash over him, a stronger, more unsettling fear than even the Bigfoot encounter. He knew, instinctively, that this visit meant trouble. Big trouble. He slowly opened the door wider, letting the two men in, wondering what on earth the government wanted with his Bigfoot video. The two men in dark suits stepped into Timothy's living room, their presence making the cozy space feel cold and formal. Timothy's mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. This was far beyond anything he'd imagined when he'd uploaded his video. The taller man, who introduced himself as Agent Sterling, looked directly at Timothy with those piercing blue eyes. "Mr. Peeler, we understand you recently uploaded a video depicting what you claim is an unknown creature in an underground environment." His voice was calm, but there was an unspoken command in it. Timothy, still shaking a little, managed to nod. "Yes, it's a Bigfoot. I filmed it in a cave near here." He tried to sound confident, but his voice wavered. Agent Sterling's partner, Agent Davies, a quieter man who had been observing everything, spoke for the first time. "We are aware of the video, Mr. Peeler. It has come to our attention, and we have determined that the footage and the information surrounding it poses a serious concern." "Concern? What kind of concern?" Timothy asked, confusion mixing with his fear. Was he in trouble for exploring a cave? Agent Sterling leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "Mr. Peeler, the existence of such a creature, particularly one found in an unknown subterranean environment, could have far-reaching implications. Public knowledge of this could cause widespread panic, disrupt ecological balances, and even create international incidents if other nations were to believe such beings existed." Timothy stared at him, bewildered. "Panic? International incidents? It's just Bigfoot. Just Bigfoot, as you call it, represents an unknown biological entity." Agent Sterling continued, as if reciting from a script. "Its presence, especially in a hidden location, could be exploited. It could be seen as a threat. For these reasons, and many others we cannot disclose, this information must be kept from the public." Then came the words that made Timothy's blood run cold. "Therefore, Mr. Peeler," Agent Sterling stated, his voice now even more firm, "we need to secure your video footage, all copies, for reasons of national security." National security. The words hung in the air, heavy and menacing. Timothy's mind reeled. They weren't asking, they were telling him. They believed him, not as a cryptozoologist might, but as a threat. His incredible discovery, his proof, was now a matter of national security, and they were here to take it away. He suddenly felt very small and powerless. Timothy felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. "National security?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "But this is my discovery, my video." He couldn't believe they were serious. This was his proof, the culmination of his lifelong passion, and they were talking about just taking it. Agent Sterling's expression remained unchanged. "We understand your personal feelings, Mr. Peeler. However, the greater good of the nation must take precedence." He made a small gesture to Agent Davies, who immediately began to move through Timothy's living room. Agent Davies went straight to Timothy's computer, where the Bigfoot video was still open. With a few quick, practiced movements, he began to download files. Timothy watched, frozen, as his precious footage, the edited version and all the raw clips, were copied onto a secure device the agent had brought. "What are you doing?" Timothy finally managed to ask, his voice rising. "You can't just take my property." Agent Sterling produced a document from his inner jacket pocket. It looked official, with many stamps and signatures. "This is a federal order, Mr. Peeler. It grants us the authority to seize all relevant materials pertaining to this incident. He didn't offer it for Timothy to read, merely held it up as a symbol of their power. Agent Davies then turned his attention to Timothy's camera, which was still on the table. He picked it up with a gloved hand, examining it. "Is this the device used to record the original footage?" he asked, his voice flat. "Yes, but—" Timothy began, reaching for it instinctively. "We will be taking this as well," Agent Sterling interrupted, "for forensic analysis." Timothy felt a surge of desperation. "But I have other copies. Backups on my hard drive, on a cloud service." Agent Davies, without a word, systematically searched Timothy's office. He found Timothy's external hard drives, his backup USB sticks, even scanned his cloud storage accounts using tools that Timothy didn't recognize. Every digital trace of the Bigfoot video was meticulously identified and deleted, or copied onto their own secure devices. They even checked his online video platform, ensuring the public video was taken down. Within minutes, the viral sensation had vanished from the internet. Finally, Agent Sterling produced a small, silver box. "Any and all physical copies of this video, Mr. Peeler," he stated. Timothy remembered the old VHS tapes from his youth, full of family memories, but they were not interested in those. He realized they meant any hard copies of the Bigfoot video itself. He had none. When they were finished, the agent stood by the door. His camera was gone, his computer files were empty of the Bigfoot video, and the online link was dead. He had nothing left. "You will not discuss this incident with anyone, Mr. Peeler," Agent Sterling warned, his blue eyes cold. "For your own safety and the safety of others. Do you understand?" Timothy could only nod, numb with shock. They left as quietly as they had arrived, leaving Timothy in his silent living room, stripped of his proof, his discovery, and his voice. He had gone from a celebrated discoverer to a man with nothing but a terrifying memory. The silence that settled over Timothy's house after the agents left was heavier than any cave silence he had ever known. He sat on his couch, staring at the empty space where his camera had been, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. His hands still trembled, not from fear of the creature now, but from the shock of what had just happened. Why? Why did they take it so fast? The speed and efficiency with which they had moved were chilling. One moment he was a local hero, a viral sensation, and the next, he was a man stripped of his discovery, silenced by a federal order. The agent's words echoed in his head. National security. He tried to make sense of it. Bigfoot, a threat to national security? It sounded like something out of a bad movie. But the stern faces of the agents, the official-looking document, and the absolute finality of their actions told him it was very real. Was the creature really that dangerous? Or was it something else entirely? Timothy thought about the Bigfoot experts who had called him, full of cautious excitement. Dr. Thorne, Dr. Petrova. They had been so eager to study the creature, to understand it. Would they have been met with the same cold, unyielding force? He doubted it. The government hadn't come to study. They had come to suppress. He felt a deep sense of injustice. This was his discovery, something he had risked his life to find and film. He had wanted to share it with the world, to open people's minds to the unknown. Instead, it had been snatched away, deemed too dangerous for public eyes. It felt like a betrayal, not just of him, but of the truth itself. The agents had mentioned widespread panic and international incidents. Was the government truly afraid that the news of Bigfoot would cause people to lose their minds? Or were they hiding something even bigger? He remembered the strange, ancient look of the cave entrance, the musky smell, the creature's intelligent eyes. Was there more to it than just a large, hairy primate? Perhaps the creature wasn't just a simple animal, but something with a deeper, more profound secret that the government wanted to keep hidden at all costs. Timothy stood up, pacing his living room. He felt violated, confused, and profoundly alone. His proof was gone, his voice silenced. The world that had been buzzing with his story was now being systematically scrubbed clean of it. He was left with nothing but his memory, and a chilling warning to never speak of it again. The weight of this secret and the government's strange actions pressed down on him, leaving him deeply unsettled. The government's heavy hand left Timothy in a state of shock and disbelief. But despite the chilling warning, he couldn't simply remain silent. The memory of the creature, the terror, and the profound mystery it represented burned within him. He had to tell someone, anyone, even without his precious video proof. He first tried reaching out to the Bigfoot experts who had taken him seriously. He called Dr. Eris Thorne, but the number just rang and rang, then went to a disconnected message. He tried Dr. Elena Petrova, only to find her email bounced back, and her university profile had been removed. It was as if they had vanished too, or perhaps been warned off. The speed of their disappearance unsettled Timothy even more. His friends and family, who had only seen the grainy, short clip, were even less convinced now that the viral video had been taken down. "See, Timothy?" his wife Sarah said gently. It was probably just a hoax, and the website removed it. His son Alex scoffed. "Dad, the government doesn't care about Bigfoot. It was probably just some internet trick you fell for." Timothy tried to explain about the men in dark suits, the federal order, and the national security claims. But without the video, his story sounded even wilder, more made up. "They deleted everything. My camera, my computer files, the online video," he pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. His friends listened politely, but their eyes held a look of pity. "Timothy, maybe you should take a break from caving," Mark suggested, clearly worried about his friend's state of mind. "It sounds like you had a very stressful experience." They thought he was imagining the government agents, or maybe even having a breakdown after a frightening cave encounter. Online, the situation was even worse. When people searched for Bigfoot Underground, my cave encounter, they found nothing. The news articles that had once featured his story were now edited or taken down. The debate on forums turned from "Is it real?" to "Remember that fake Bigfoot video?" The guy took it down. The tide of public opinion had turned against him. Without the footage, he was just another person with a crazy story, easily dismissed as a prankster or someone who had cracked under the pressure of online fame. Timothy felt utterly alone, isolated by a truth that no one would believe without proof. The very thing that had brought him attention and potential validation was now gone, leaving him with a story that sounded like pure fiction. The world had seen his proof, if only for a short time, but now it was as if it had never existed. He was a witness to something incredible, yet he had no way to convince anyone. Even though the Bigfoot video had been erased from the internet, its brief existence had sparked a fire that couldn't be completely put out. People remembered. For a short time, millions had seen something impossible. And even without the video, the memory of it lingered in the vast corners of the internet. Online forums, especially those about strange creatures and government secrets, continued to buzz with Timothy's name. The debate shifted from analyzing the footage to arguing about its disappearance. A new kind of conspiracy theory took root. The government covered up the Bigfoot video. Some people fiercely defended Timothy. They pointed to the speed with which the video was removed, the sudden silence from news outlets, and the disappearance of the Bigfoot experts he had mentioned. Why would the government act so fast if it was just a fake? They argued. This proves it was real. They don't want us to know. They believed Timothy was a brave truth-teller, silenced by powerful forces. These believers often shared screenshots they had managed to grab before the video was taken down, or blurry, low-quality recordings of news segments that had aired for a few hours. They analyzed every pixel, every shadow, trying to prove that what Timothy had filmed was truly a living creature. They talked about the musky smell he described, the ancient cave, and the intelligent eyes. But just as many, if not more, people thought Timothy was a fraud. He took the video down himself because he got caught, they claimed. It was just a guy in a suit, a cheap trick for attention. They said he was trying to create a new conspiracy theory to keep himself famous. They laughed at the idea of Bigfoot living underground, calling it silly and childish. Even some of the cryptozoology forums, initially excited, grew wary. Without the full, original footage, and with Timothy himself unable to provide more details without risking trouble, even some dedicated Bigfoot researchers began to doubt. "It's a shame," one forum moderator wrote, "but without verifiable evidence, this just becomes another unproven claim." Timothy would sometimes secretly check these online debates, a mix of sadness and frustration washing over him. He saw his name dragged through the mud, his integrity questioned, his terrifying experience turned into a joke. He yearned to step in, to tell them the truth about the agents, about the warning. But he knew he couldn't. He was caught in a strange limbo. He knew the truth, but the world was divided, unable to decide if he was a hero or a hoax. The battle for his story was now being fought without him, online, in a war of words and blurred memories. The public's doubts and the government's threats weighed heavily on Timothy. He knew the truth, but without his video, he had no way to prove it. The only path forward, he decided, was to return to the source, the cave itself. If he could find more evidence, perhaps even another glimpse of the creature, he could prove he wasn't making it up. Despite the fear that still lingered from his last encounter, a desperate hope fueled him. He pulled out his old, reliable GPS device, not his phone, which might be tracked. He carefully loaded the coordinates he had saved the day he found the cave. He packed a new, small digital camera, nothing fancy, just enough to get some quick shots if he found something. This time, he didn't tell anyone where he was going. He drove back to the remote mountain area, the air growing colder as he climbed higher. He hiked the familiar deer trail, his eyes scanning the tree line for any signs of disturbance, any indication that others had been there. There was none. The woods were quiet, peaceful, almost too peaceful. Finally, he reached the rocky bluff where he was certain the cave entrance was located. He remembered the thick curtain of ivy and brambles, the dark, jagged opening. He looked for the orange ribbon he had tied to a tree branch. It was gone. A cold dread began to creep over him. He checked his GPS again, double-checking the coordinates, walking back and forth, comparing the landscape to his memory. This was the spot. He was sure of it. But the cave entrance was nowhere to be found. He pushed through every thicket of ivy, pulled back every curtain of leaves, ran his hands over every inch of the rocky bluff. He spent hours, meticulously searching, his hope slowly turning into despair. The ground looked solid, the rock face unbroken. It was as if the entrance had never existed. The purple-black rock, the strange musky smell, all gone. He remembered the feel of the ancient rock, the way the light had been swallowed. Now, there was just ordinary rock, covered in moss and lichen, blending seamlessly with the mountain. There were no signs of recent excavation, no fresh earth, no telltale marks of heavy machinery. It was as if the earth itself had sealed the wound, erasing all traces of the hidden world within. Timothy sank to the ground, exhausted and defeated. His last hope of proving his story, of getting new evidence, had vanished. The cave was gone. Sitting defeated on the mountain, where a mysterious cave entrance had once been, Timothy's mind wrestled with the impossible. How could a gaping hole in the earth simply vanish? It wasn't just covered. It was gone, leaving no trace, no sign of rockfall or natural closure. The more he thought about it, the more one terrifying answer became clear. The government. He remembered Agent Sterling's cold, serious eyes and his words about national security. They had been so quick to seize his video, to silence him. Would it be so hard for them to make a cave disappear too? Timothy pictured men in dark suits, perhaps even military personnel, arriving with heavy equipment under the cover of night. They could have used explosives to collapse the entrance, then carefully disguise the site, making it look like untouched wilderness. Or perhaps they had some kind of advanced technology, something he couldn't even imagine, that could seal a cave without leaving a mark. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. It meant they believed him completely. They didn't just want to hide his video, they wanted to hide the entire location, to ensure no one else could ever find the creature. This wasn't just about public panic. It was about control, about keeping a profound secret from the world. He also wondered about the creature itself. What happened to the Bigfoot living inside? Did the government simply seal it in, trapping it forever? Or had they captured it? The idea of the magnificent, wild creature he had glimpsed being imprisoned or harmed filled him with a new kind of dread. He had stumbled upon a secret world, and now that world and its inhabitant were at the mercy of forces far greater than himself. The disappearance of the cave entrance only strengthened Timothy's conviction that his story was true. His family and friends might think he was losing his mind, the online world might label him a hoax, but he knew what he had seen. And now, he knew what the government had done. They had gone to extreme lengths to bury the truth, to erase the evidence, and to silence the man who dared to uncover it. This wasn't a trick of the light or a figment of his imagination. This was a deliberate, powerful act of secrecy. Timothy left the mountain that day, not just defeated, but with a new, unsettling understanding of how far powerful groups would go to keep certain truths hidden. Timothy's heart ached with the loss of his proof and the vanishing of the cave. Yet, the experience, terrifying as it was, had also been deeply profound. He had seen Bigfoot. He had touched a secret corner of the world, and the government's extreme actions only solidified his belief that his encounter was real and important. They wouldn't go to such lengths for a hoax. Despite the warnings, despite the ridicule, Timothy couldn't stay silent. The truth was too big, too important to be buried forever. He knew he couldn't shout it from the rooftops, not with the threat of those men in dark suits hanging over him. But he could tell his story in whispers, in careful conversations, to those who might listen with an open mind. He started subtly. He began writing down everything he remembered, every detail of the cave, the sounds, the smell, the fleeting glimpse of the creature. He described the ancient feel of the entrance, the deep silence broken by heavy thumps, the intelligent eyes that had looked at him. He poured his heart into these writings, trying to capture the vividness of his memory, hoping that words alone could paint a picture strong enough to overcome the lack of video evidence. He also found new ways to connect with people who were genuinely curious. He started visiting local libraries and small community gatherings, not to give grand speeches, but to share his passion for caving and the wonders of the natural world. Slowly, he would weave in hints of his extraordinary experience, speaking about unexplained phenomena or the vastness of the unknown beneath our feet. He looked for the spark of curiosity in people's eyes, the ones who seemed to understand that the world held more secrets than textbooks could explain. Timothy knew he might never get his video back or prove his story to the masses, but he couldn't let the government's actions erase his truth. He had been a witness, and he believed it was his duty to keep that witness alive, even if it was just through his words and his unwavering belief. He became a quiet storyteller, a keeper of a secret that the world refused to acknowledge, hoping that one day his persistent whispers might ignite a new fire of curiosity and belief in others. He knew his journey was far from over. Timothy continued to live his life, but he was forever changed. The quiet caver now carried a heavy secret, a truth he couldn't fully share. He kept writing, filling notebooks with his memories, observations, and theories about the Bigfoot, the cave, and the government's swift actions. He knew these writings might never see the light of day, but for him, it was a way to keep the truth alive, even if only in his own mind. His friends and family never truly believed him. They saw his continued talk about Bigfoot and government cover-ups as a lingering side effect of a traumatic cave trip. "Poor Timothy," they'd say with a shake of their heads. "He really got a scare down there." The public, having only seen the short, shaky video before its removal, and then the strong denials, largely dismissed his story as an internet hoax that had been exposed. The brief flurry of excitement and debate faded into the background noise of countless other online mysteries. But for some, the seed of doubt had been planted. There were still those who remembered the video, the speed of its disappearance, and the sudden silence from news outlets. They continued to whisper about the underground Bigfoot and the footage that was seized. These were the true believers, the ones who suspected that where there was smoke, there was fire, even if the fire had been quickly put out by unseen hands. The mystery of Bigfoot underground remained unsolved for the world. Was Timothy a hero who discovered an impossible truth, only to be silenced? Or was he just a man who saw shadows in the dark and let his imagination run wild? Without the footage, without the cave entrance, and with Timothy himself bound by an unspoken threat, there was no way to know for sure. The creature, if it still existed, continued to live in its hidden world, undisturbed by human eyes. The ancient cave, if it was indeed sealed, held its secrets tight, perhaps forever. And the government, having successfully buried the truth, moved on to other matters, leaving the public none the wiser. Timothy Peeler became a quiet legend in his own mind, a man who held a secret that could change the world, if only the world would believe him. He spent his days exploring other, less mysterious caves, but his heart always remembered the dark, musky entrance, the thumping sounds, and the intelligent eyes of the creature that had turned his life upside down. The questions lingered, hanging in the air like the mist in a deep cavern. What was Bigfoot doing underground? Why did the government go to such lengths to hide it? And would the truth ever truly come out? Everyone was left to wonder, and Timothy, most of all, wondered what might have been.